Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're going to be looking at Psalm 63, Thirsting for God. We begin with a fairly short superscription, a Psalm of David. A lot of these have been Psalms of David, when he was in the wilderness of Judah. And this is speaking of the period where he is on the run from Saul. That's why he would be in the wilderness of Judah. If you look at our map, you can see Jerusalem and Bethlehem and a little bit further south, Hebron. Um, those are key cities of Judah, Jerusalem being in the very, very north of Judah. You go north of that and you've left the kingdom of Judah, the tribe of Judah. But if you go to the east, that's past the ridge. That's the area where you're descending down toward the Dead Sea, and it drops precipitously. Think about this. Jerusalem is about 2,500 feet above sea level. The Dead Sea, these days at least, is 1,400 feet below sea level. That's a long way down, and there's not a lot of people that live there. That's why it's called the wilderness of Judah, not just Judah. So it's David when he's on the run. He's hiding somewhere in this area, and we're not even told where. And now the psalm begins, "O God, you are my God." Almost like a statement of faith of God, you're my God. You're the God of everything else, but you are my God. I shall seek you earnestly. Um, my soul thirsts for you, my flesh yearns for you in a dry and weary land where there is no water. And that's the wilderness of Judah. It doesn't rain that much on that side of the mountains, even in the rainy season. Most of the rainfall has a tendency to fall. Sometimes it falls in Jerusalem, and there's some that flows down. But most of the rain falls to the east. This area is rather dry. It doesn't see a lot of rainfall, even in their rainy season. Um, and so here's a picture. He's in a dry place, but only is he in a physically dry place, he's in a spiritually dry place. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh yearns for you in a dry and weary land where there is no water. No water physically, but I think probably no water spiritually as well. Verse 2, thus I have seen you in the sanctuary. And as soon as you see the sanctuary, remember that's not in the wilderness, that's in Jerusalem. That's where the temple was. Now, if this is a Psalm of David, the temple hadn't been built yet. If this is a song commemorating David, maybe the psalm was written a bit later, where they can focus on the temple. Thus I've seen you in the sanctuary to see your power and your glory. Because your loving kindness is better than life, my lips will praise you. So I will bless you as long as I live. I'll lift up my hands in your name. So look at these images of the sanctuary, but of the worship that takes place in the sanctuary. And so here's the psalmist speaking to the Lord. He's expressing his faith, even though it's dry, even though things are dry. He's feeling dry. He's in a dry and thirsty land, and yet he looks forward to praising the Lord. And so notice, your loving kindness is better than life. That's that chesed, that loyalty. Verse 5, my soul is satisfied. And notice, the thirst might be there, but he looks to the satisfaction of the dry period in his life. He knows it's not going to be dry. And now there's a change, even as we're reading the psalm. My soul is satisfied as with marrow and fatness. My mouth offers praise with joyful lips. Verse 6, when I remember you on my bed. And he pauses and remembers. And of course, when you're on your bed, that's sort of speaking at night. And in case you didn't pick that up, notice the second line expands on that, says the same thing, but expands on it a little bit. I meditate, so I remember and I meditate. That's the same thing on you in the night watches. That's where you are in your bed. You're in the night, in the night watches. Verse 7, what he's thinking about, what he's meditating on, for you have been my help, and in the shadow of your wings I sing for joy. Now we've seen that figure of speech already, in the shadow of your wings. And of course, when you hear wings, you think of like a bird's wings, and I can't help but think of the words of Jesus in Matthew 23 when he says, "Oh, Jerusalem, how often I wanted to gather you under my wings like a hen gathers her chicks." But remember, there's a sort of a double meaning of this figure of speech. Not only do you get the picture of a bird's wings, but also in that culture, in Jewish culture in particular, the wings of your robe, the wings of your garment, were those ends of the garment, and it used the same term, but there's this imagery of finding a place of refuge under the shadow of someone's wings. That could be just somebody's protection. Think about how, and we've used this example already of how Boaz says to Ruth, "May the Lord bless you, under whose wings you have sought shelter." Well, here is the same idea, but notice it doesn't use the word shelter; it uses the word shadow. Um, and in a dry and thirsty land, let me just say, shadow becomes very important. I remember one time, Paula and I, my wife and I, were in Israel, but not just in Israel. We were up at Galilee, and they were having a heat wave. It got up to 110 degrees, and we were just looking for any sort of shade from the sun. It was hot. It was very hot, and shadow was an important thing. And in the shadow of your wings, notice, I sing for joy. I'm so glad to be there under the protecting shadow of your wings. Verse 8, my soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. So we have in verses 1 through 8, the ones what we've been looking at, a prayer to the Lord. Notice he's been speaking to the Lord. The psalmist has been speaking to the Lord. I remember you. I meditate on you. You have been my help. My soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. All throughout verses 1 through 8, he's been praying to God. But now there's going to be a difference as we go from verses 9 to 11. We're going to hear his assurance of faith in God. He's not going to be speaking to God now. He's going to be speaking to us as if to say, you ought to have the same sort of assurance. And if you doubt about that, then maybe you ought to be praying to God as well. I think that maybe is the subtext here. So let's look. Verse 9, but those who seek my life to destroy it, and we're going to see some bad things happening in verses 9 through 11. Those who seek my life to destroy it, they will go into the depths of the earth. They will be delivered over to the power of the sword. They will be a prey for foxes. And so that's bad stuff. That's the those that are against me. And notice the bad things are going to come back on them. They are seeking my life, but they're going to go to the depths of the earth. They are the ones that are going to be delivered over to the power of the sword. They are the ones that are going to be a prey for foxes. And so you can trust the Lord even in the face of evil people. And that's what we're seeing in verses 9 and 10. But verse 11, now we turn it around. But the king will rejoice in God. And we haven't seen the king. This is the first mention of the king. Of course, this was in the superscription to or for David. Of course, he was a king. But remember, it was to David not when he was a king, but when he was hiding in the wilderness of Judah. And yet, it's looking forward. But the king will rejoice in God. Everyone who swears by him. Now you say, what does it mean to swear by him? The him, I think, notice how the New American Standard capitalized the him as though it refers to God. I think they're right here. I think the him refers to God. And swearing by God, you say, well, is that a bad thing or a good thing? Well, it's not a good thing if you're not going to keep your oath. But if you're going to keep your oath, that's okay. It's something that they were called to do back in the Old Testament. Now Jesus said, be careful about swearing at all if you're going to swearing about something that you can't bring about. But if it's something that you can bring about, or you're swearing your loyalty, or it's okay to take an oath in that regard. For example, when my wife and I were married, it's going on 52 years ago, we took an oath. We actually took a solemn oath to be faithful to one another and to be united, and we are. Now, doesn't mean that we never had any rough spots along the way, but it's been good, and it's good to honor that. And so notice everyone who swears by him That's a good thing, not a bad thing. They're holding up God as the one who is honored and the one before whom we have our oaths. Everyone who swears by him will glory. That's good. For the mouths of those who speak lies will be stopped. Now notice this is the contrast. The one who swears by him, those that honor the Lord, that are following the Lord, versus those who have the mouths of those who speak lies. And they're going to come to a bad ending. So notice the point is that truth will win in the end. And the second part is that lies are going to be ended. That the truth will win, God will win. But notice the reference to the king. Before we leave, I want to look at the king. See, we started this psalm where the psalmist thirsts for God. And we ended on verse 11, the king will rejoice in God. What happened? The king is satisfied. His thirst was satisfied. And this is a reminder that we have a king. He's bigger than the king of Israel. I guess he's the ultimate king of Israel. We have a king who gave his life, so that our thirst could be satisfied. He was, can I say it this way? He was thirsty so that our thirst would be satisfied. And we can trust in that king, the King of Kings. And he's coming again. And when he does, those who honor him, those who honor the Lord, will be saved, and those who don't, every lie is going to be ended. The truth will win in the end.